When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
The Two-Footed Podcast is brought to you by EPLindex.com and our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider. A virtual privacy network allows you to go online, change your location, access things you're geo-blocked from, while keeping your data safe. So, as an example, if you are a UK expat and want access to BBC iPlayer to watch Match of the Day, or ITV Hub, or all four, will you get that message that says this content is not available in your location? A Liberty Shield VPN gets you around that block, allows you to watch whatever you want on those services, while also keeping your data safe. And it goes further than that. It allows you to open up Netflix's entire library by just changing your IP address. Liberty Shield is the #1 rated VPN provider on Trustpilot with 5-star ratings across the board. So go to libertyshield.com right now, use the code EPL25 and get either the hardware package or the software package. The hardware package is a router that you plug into your existing router, and any item you want to change the IP address on, be it your phone or your television, you connect that to the new Liberty Shield router. All other items can remain connected to your existing router. There's also a software package, which is instantly downloadable to your device, and you can get using straight away. Again, libertyshield.com, EPL25 for 25% off at checkout. We're also brought to you by Home of Hopcroft, a giftware and homeware company located in Scotland but shipping worldwide. Check out homeofhopcroft.co.uk and do check out the EPL Index and Anfield Index shops, which you'll find on Etsy. Use the codes EPL10 or RED10 for 10% off at checkout. And lastly, do remember to check out A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. That podcast is on this feed before every Premier League match week. And then the EPL Roundtable, hosted by Kevin DeVries, on its own EPL Roundtable feed. So just search EPL Roundtable in your podcast device. And that's out after every match week. Now, on with the show. It's good, boys and girls. Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is June the 26th. A little bit overcast and muggy today. Wouldn't be a fan. Wasn't a fan of the football we saw last night either. Some very, very, very dull games at Euro 2024. Now, we did have one really exciting game, so we'll save that for last. France won, Poland won. Both goals coming from the penalty spot. Kylian Mbappe after Ousmane Dembele was brought down. And then Robert Lewandowski, who got to retake his first penalty after one of the most ridiculous-looking penalty techniques I've ever seen, was saved by Mike Maignan. A silly foul by Upamecano, penalty given, Lewandowski steps up. Clown show of a routine, saved by Maignan, but Maignan had come off the line early. Lewandowski allowed to retake it, and he does score. And to be fair, Poland probably deserved the draw. France were incredibly disappointing. So France finished the group with 2 goals scored, one of which was an own goal and the other of which was a penalty. So 0 open play goals scored, or non-penalty goals scored by a French player in 3 games against Austria, the Dutch, and Poland, none of whom are considered likely to win this competition. So that was the first game in Group D. Obviously, the 2 games are at the same time, but we'll come back to the other game. We'll focus in on Group C for a second. Denmark 0, Serbia 0. Denmark were marginally the better team. But they weren't good. they weren't good. The Serbs were not good. It was quite a cowardly performance from the Serbs, who needed the win to go through and offered very little for the majority of the game. I'm glad Denmark are through. I think there's a good team there. I'm not sure the manager's making the best use of the squad, but there is a lot of good players in that squad, and at times they do play good football. This was not one of the times where they played good football, though. This has been a rather dour group, and as we move on to the final game in that group, England 0, Slovenia 0, we're looking at a situation where over 3 match days we had 6 games in this group, and 5 of them ended in draws. No team scored more than 1 goal in any match. 3 1-1 draws, 2 0-0 draws, and a 1-0 England win over Serbia. Had that game ended 1-1, we would have landed in a situation where all 3 teams failed to win a game, had 3 points, had scored 2, conceded 2, and had a goal difference of 0. Like, that's how close we were to just meh. And it was very, very close to that anyway. It might be one of those boring groups of all time. And you know what's frustrating? And it was always going to happen because there's more pressure on these last games. But through the first 2 match days, I was actually quite enjoying the Euros. But this last match day thus far has been largely dreadful. Like, in Group A, we had Switzerland and Germany. That was pretty boring. Scotland against Hungary was very boring. Albania, Spain was very boring. Croatia versus Italy was okay. England, Slovenia was just horrible to watch. Denmark, Serbia was boring. France, Poland was boring. The Netherlands, Austria is the only game that's been in any way exciting through 8 of the final 12 games. And I don't hold out much hope for too many of today's games giving us excitement. But for England to finish a group with Denmark, Slovenia and Serbia, with just 1 win, with just 2 goals scored, like, we've got to continue to ask major question marks about the direction of the team and whether or not Gareth Southgate should be getting more out of them. And I mean, look, anybody can see that he should be getting more out of them. Even the substitutions he makes yesterday. He brings on Mainu for Gallagher at half-time. Right? You've dropped Trent, you've brought in Gallagher, and you bin him off at half-time. Fair enough. You know, he's not suited to a double pivot anyway. And everybody could have looked at the game beforehand and said, Gallagher and Rice is not going to work in a double pivot. Mainu and Rice didn't work in a double pivot either. Then he brings on Cole Palmer for Bukayo Saka. Then he brings on Trent for Trippier. Shifts Walker to left back. And then he brings on Gordon for Foden with a minute left. And it was described as a roll of the dice. Absolute drivel. Had he taken off Kyle Walker and put on Gordon, I could have seen that as a roll of the dice. But swapping winger for winger is not a roll of the dice at all. And, you know, we can go through this England team. Can we name a player who's played well? I mean, Guehi's been pretty good. Stones has been pretty good. But both fullbacks have been poor. All of the midfielders have been poor. All of the attackers have been poor. And Pickford's had very little to do. It's not one player. It's an entire group of players, which points to the fact that they're not been put in positions, in a system, in a shape that accentuates the talent in this group. And there is a phenomenal amount of talent in that English squad. It is absolutely ridiculous how much talent they have. And yet, Gareth Southgate isn't getting the best out of anybody, including Guehi and Stones, who've been his best players. Like, those two are capable of a lot more, but he's not maximising them. He's got the best right back in the world. He sat him on the bench yesterday. He played him in midfield the two previous games. Why is Kyle Walker on the team? Like, what winger were England going to face in the group stage that Trent wouldn't have been able to deal with? Against Serbia, was Filip Kostic going to cause them all that much trouble? I really don't think so. Against the Danes, was Christiansen going to cause them all that much trouble? Seems highly unlikely. Not forgetting that both of them were playing as wing-backs. And what about Mlakar? Was he going to rinse Trent? Who in this tournament is going to cause Trent a whole lot of trouble? Maybe Rafa Leao if they end up playing Portugal? Maybe. But Trent will cause him just as much trouble going the other way. Mbappe's not playing as a winger. The likelihood of them playing Georgia was always minimal. So Karicha, who has destroyed Trent in the past, was not a factor here. As much as Jamal Musial and Florian Wirtz are wonderful players, neither of them are the type of player that really gives Trent trouble. So why is Walker in the team? Because he offers so little on the ball. He's not a great defender. He's a good recovery defender because of his pace. But that's not what's needed at the moment. It's very, very strange. Very, very strange. And the Trippier thing is even weirder. And the whole Luke Shaw thing is bizarre. I really don't understand why he refuses to play Adam Wharton. Like, Wharton is exactly what England need in midfield. Someone that can just get on the ball and play it quickly and keep the ball moving and play it between the lines and open things up. Anthony Gordon came on with a minute to go and played stoppage time. So what, total 5-6 minutes on the pitch? And he got himself involved in the play and made quick decisions. And that's what England are lacking. Drastically lacking. It's just all very, very disappointing to sit and watch them play. In the final game then from last night, Group D, Austria 3, the Netherlands 2. Daniel Malen with an own goal. Cody Gakpo equalises just after half-time. Romano Schmidt scores on 60. Memphis Depay, really interesting kind of bit of improvisation by Memphis, but scores a good goal. But Marcel Sabitzer takes advantage of Van Dijk just being too deep and playing everybody onside and makes it 3-2. So Austria topped the group, and I wouldn't imagine anybody called Austria topping that group. Austria topped through, France second through, Netherlands third and through. So as things currently stand, we know that Spain, Germany, Denmark, Portugal, France, Austria, England, Switzerland and Italy are through as either group winners or group runners-up. For the third place qualifiers, Netherlands are through, Slovenia are through, Slovakia and Hungary now need to wait on their fate. Slovakia, though, have still a game to play. Croatia are out. The Czechs or Georgia could still find their way in depending on results today. Today at 5 p.m, Slovakia play Romania and Ukraine take on Belgium. Do we have team news? We do. So Ukraine have gone to a back five. Trubin in goal. Kimchek, Zabarny, Zvatok, Matvienko, and Michaelenko as a back five. Shaparenko, Brajko is very good, and Sudakov as a midfield three. Yaramchuk and Dovbyk in attack. Zinchenko not in the team. For the Belgians, you've got Castells in goal, Castagne, Faze, Vertonghen, and Thiete as the back four. Tielemans and Onana as the double pivot. Doku, De Bruyne, Trossard, and Lukaku. I mean, Zeno de Bast should be in that team over Wood Faze or Jan Vertonghen, but it is what it is. The other game then today, at 5, Slovakia, Romania. Slovakia, Dubravka in goal, Pekarik, Vavro, Skriniar, and Hanko. Kuka, Lobotka, and Duda in midfield. Schranz, Strelic, and Harrislan up top. The Romanians have Nita in goal, Ratiu, Burka, Dragozin, and Banku. Marin sat at the base in midfield. Hadji on the right, Coleman on the left, Marin and Stanshu as the kind of double attacking midfielders, and Dragos up front. Should be two decent games because they're quite evenly matched. Obviously, that group is very evenly matched with all teams being on 3 points. As things stand, Romania and Belgium would go through. Slovakia would finish third, but that can all change. We have no idea at this moment who's coming out of that group. They might get 3 teams. They might only get 2. In Group F, then in the 8 p.m. kickoffs, it's Georgia versus Portugal. Portugal already through, guaranteed to win the group. Georgia, they need to win. Simple as that. The Czech Republic taking on Turkey. Turkey, a point is enough, and the Czechs need to win. And if the Czechs if the Czechs win, then potentially it's Hungary who will drop out of the third place qualifiers, depending on the scorelines. If it's 3-0, it will be the Czechs going through, Turkey going out completely, and the Hungarians will qualify. If it's like a 1-0 win, then the Czechs would go through. Turkey would be one of the best third place qualifiers. So still loads to play for in these games tonight, and still a lot riding on them for the Hungarians, who can do nothing other than sit in the hotel and hope, I suppose. And then we'll be done with the group stages. Now, we already know that in the round of 16, Germany will play Denmark, Switzerland will play Italy. None of the other games are locked in yet, so we can have a look at those tomorrow. In the Copa America, we had 2 games yesterday. Peru 0, Canada 1. Miguel Orejo sent off on 59 minutes, and Jonathan David scoring the only goal of the game on 74 to give Canada the win. Chile 0, Argentina 1. Latour Martinez in the 88th minute to give Argentina the win and guarantee them a spot in the knockout phases. Today, we have Ecuador versus Jamaica. That's 11 p.m. UK time. And then Venezuela versus Mexico. That's 2 a.m. UK time. I'll watch the Ecuador game. I don't see any possibility I'm going to stay up and watch Venezuela versus Mexico. Nothing against those teams, but there's just not anybody that I'm really all that keen on seeing from either side. At least with Ecuador, you've got Caicedo, Hincapié, Pacho, etc., etc. So it should be interesting. Right, back after the break. Right, welcome back. So, we are carrying on. And next on our list of Premier League clubs to have a look back at what they did this season and what they might do this summer is Nottingham Forest. Now, Forest obviously went into last season with Steve Cooper in charge and ended the season with Nuno Espirito Santo in charge. Last summer, They made the Chris Wood deal permanent. They signed Ola Aina on a free. Anthony Elanga for about 12 million. Matt Turner for about 5 million. And then, just when you thought, oh, well, Forest have had quite a restrained summer, they haven't done what they did last year and signed 47 players. Between the last 3 days, 2 days really, the last 2 days of the transfer window, they bought Murillo, they bought Nicholas Dominguez, they bought Callum Hudson-Odoi, they bought Vlachodimos, they bought Ibrahim Senghir, they bought Andrew Omabamidele, and they loaned in Nuno Tavares and Divock Origi. They had previously loaned in Gonzalo Montiel and Andre Santos from Chelsea. They just couldn't help themselves. They had to go and bring in 8 players in about 27 hours. A very unique approach to squad building, to bring in 8 players after games have started. In January, they brought in Gio Reyna on loan, Rodrigo Ribeiro on loan, and they signed Matt Sells from Strasbourg. Out the door went Andre Ayew, Cafu, Jack Colbeck, Jesse Lingard, Sam Surridge, Steve Cook, Brennan Johnson, John Joe Shelby, Julian Biancone, Gustavo Scarpa, Ethan Horvath, Serge Aurier. Who did they loan? Oh yeah, in January they loaned loads. They loaned out Lewis O'Brien last summer. They loaned out Jonathan Panzo. They loaned out Hwang. They loaned out Remy Freuler. They loaned out Emmanuel Dennis, first to Istanbul Besiktas. That didn't work out. And then he came back and he was loaned to Watford. They loaned Scott McKenna to Copenhagen. They loaned Oriel Mangala to Lyon, though it was with an option to buy. And they loaned Joe Worrell to Besiktas. Lots and lots of messing about with Nottingham Forest. In the FA Cup, they played Blackpool in the third round, drew 2-2 at home, and then beat them 3-2 away after extra time in a replay. Then they drew Bristol City. They drew 0-0 away. Then at home, they drew 1-1 after extra time and beat them 5-3 in penalties, and then they lost 1-0 at home to Manchester United. That's 2 unnecessary extra games they shouldn't have had to tax their players with, and extra time in both, and the stress of a penalty shootout, just by not playing well in those cup games against Blackpool at home and Bristol City away. In the EFL Cup, they got dumped out in the second round by Burnley. So not exactly stellar in the Cups. Now, Cooper lasted until the 19th of December. On the 19th of December, we are looking at 17 league games played. And they were 17. They'd won 3 games and drawn 5 games. They ended up in 17th. Now, they did win 6 games of the last 21, with 4 draws. So they did take more points under Nuno than they did under Cooper, but marginally. And there's absolutely no question that Cooper would have kept them up. Luton were not going to finish above them. Burnley were not going to finish above them. And Sheffield United were not going to finish above them. That much was clear at that point. The concern, obviously, for Forest was the risk of reduction. They were deducted 4 points for breaching profit and sustainability rules. They appealed the decision, but were unsuccessful. So they did take 36 points for the season, but ended up with 32 after the 4 points were taken off. They began the season by losing away to Arsenal. That's fine. 2-1, no shame in it. Then they beat Sheffield United at home. Then they lost away to Manchester United. Fair. They went and beat Chelsea. 1-1 draw at home with Burnley. That's disappointing. Lost away to City. That's fine. Drew at home with Brentford. I think that's okay. Drew away with Palace. That's fine. That's a good result, if anything. Disappointing 2-2 draw with Luton. Lost away to Liverpool. No problem there. Beat Aston Villa at home. It's a great result for them. So that's wins away to Chelsea and home over Villa that are really good results. Then they lost to West Ham, to Brighton, to Everton, away to Fulham. They drew at home with Wolves, and then they lost at home to Spurs. So as I look at that, I look at the draw against Burnley and the draw against Luton and think, you should have won those games. And I look at the defeat at home to Everton and think, that's a bad result. That's 3 bad results out of 17 games. I'm not sure that's really grounds for the sack. And I understand that he'd lost 5 of 6. But you torpedoed his season and his plans by adding 8 new players in 27 hours after games had begun. In fact, they added 10 new players after games had begun, but 8 in that last 27 hours of the window. But 10 new players after games began. Like, you'd played 2 games and then you brought in 10 new players. That's scandalous. So they sack Cooper, they lose at home to Bournemouth. Then they go and beat Newcastle away and then beat Manchester United at home. The only time all season they won back-to-back games. Then they lose at Brentford, lose at home to Arsenal. They're both fine. Draw away to Bournemouth, fair. Lose at home to Newcastle. They beat West Ham at home. That's a good result. They lose away to Villa. Lose home to Liverpool. Lose away to Brighton. Draw with Luton. That's disappointing. Draw at home with Palace. That's fine. Beat Fulham at home. Lose away to Spurs. Draw at home with Wolves. Lose away to Everton. Lose home to City. They do beat Sheffield United at Bramall Lane. They lose at home to Chelsea, and then they beat Burnley at Turf Moor on the final day. The 2 impressive results, they got 3 impressive results under Nuno. The first 2 wins, Newcastle away and United home, and then the West Ham home win. So in 21 games, I think there's 3 impressive results there. I think there's 2 for Cooper, but it's only 17 games. So I don't think they improved a whole lot. He certainly didn't make them any more attack-minded. Not sure he made them any better defensively. They conceded 74 goals in all competitions, obviously. 67 in the league to 49 scored in the league. 55 scored in all comps. I don't feel like Nuno improved them at all, and I'd be surprised if he sees out the season. Now, one thing that he obviously has in his favour is that he does have an existing relationship with the owner that dates back quite a while. I think probably through his agent, George Mendes. But like, you look at Nuno, he was at Rio Ave to begin his career. Did pretty well. He got the Valencia job, which was weird at the time because it's quite a big jump. But Mendes was calling the shots there. Peter Lim, is that his name? The guy that owns Salford and still owns Valencia? I think it's Peter Lim. It is Peter Lim. He had bought the club. He had sought out Mendes for his influence. And he hires him. So he lasts just over a season, gets fired. Goes to Porto, stays a season. Don't think anybody was overly impressed by what he did there. He goes to Wolves, and credit to him, Now, again, Mendes pulling the strings. He did great work at Wolves. He really did. Getting them promoted in the manner he got them promoted and then keeping them in the division. But it went stale. So it made sense for them to move on. Then he gets the Spurs job after everybody else turns them down and it's a disaster and he's sacked after 17 games. He sits out for 7 months and then he goes to Al Ittihad in Saudi. And to his credit, he won the Saudi Cup and the Saudi Pro League. And then a few months later, he was fired. And then 6 weeks later, magically, he appears at Nottingham Forest. I wouldn't be a big fan of Nuno as a manager. I think he's got a decent idea of what he wants to do. I just don't think he executes it very well. And I think there's a lot of talent in this Forest squad. Now, I'm not keen on any of the goalkeepers. Not keen on Turner. I think he's a good backup. Vlachodimos, I would sell instantly. And Matt Sells, again, I think he's a good backup. I don't think they've got a starting caliber goalkeeper between the three of them. They don't own Nuno, so that's fine. Nico Williams, to me, is a backup fullback, but they paid a lot of money for him. Harry Toffolo is a championship-level player. I wouldn't want anything to do with Felipe. He'd be gone out the door. Montiel was on loan. If I was them, I'd probably try and get him back. I think he's a decent player. Niakate, I do like. Willy Bolly, he's out of contract. I don't know if they're going to re-sign him. I'd probably let him leave, being honest. I would want to keep Ola Aina. They signed him on a 1-year deal. I'd look to extend him 2 or 3 years. I really like Murillo. I really like Omabamidele. I think I'd like them more as 2/3 of a 3, say with Niakate in the middle of them. But assuming they're going to play a back 4, you've got those two as your starters, Niakate as a backup. You've got Worrell and McKenna to come back. You could keep one and sell the other. And you look to buy one backup at centre-back. If you can keep Montiel on loan, it solves your right-back issue. Otherwise, you need to buy a right-back. You definitely need to buy a left-back. Aina can play both. He's ideal as a third full-back. And that's your defence sorted. So goalkeeper, backup, centre-back, starting left-back, and a starting right-back. You need a lot. But in midfield, I like this group. I really like Sangaré. I really like Nicolas Dominguez. I love Danilo. Ryan Yates, I could take or leave, but he's a fine squad player. But that's a really good group. If he's your fourth one. And then you've got Gibbs White. So depending on what you want to do, let's say 4-2-3-1. To me, it's obvious Sangaré and Danilo are the starters. Dominguez and Yates should be your squad players. Gibbs White is your 10. I'd try and run Gio Reyna back for another year on loan, and he's your backup 10. Then you've got Hudson-Odoi one wing, Elanga the other wing. That's pretty strong. Awoniyi up front, Wood as a backup. Let Divock Origi go back. And then look to maybe bring back Emmanuel Dennis and have him as depth on the flanks. Maybe Brandon Aguilera is worth giving a chance to for depth on the wing. If you're going to keep him, I don't know what the plan is there. But if not, you probably need to bring in one depth winger. But you're in a pretty decent position. Now, I know they've already signed Stamenic, the defensive midfielder, and De Silva Moura, the kind of winger who can also play a bit of right back from St. Pauli. If both of them land and sit well into the squad, then you're in pretty good nick. You are in pretty good nick. Scott McKenna has actually been released. His contract must have been up. Felipe has retired. Harry Arter's been released. Czech Kouyaté has been released. That's not a surprise. Aina has signed a new deal, as has Willy Bolly. So Willy Bolly is your 5th centre-back. So sign one depth centre-back, two starting full-backs, a starting goalkeeper, and a backup winger. And I think you're okay. I think you've got enough to stay up. I'm not sure Nuno's good enough to keep you in the division, though. That's my big concern. And if he goes, where do you look next? See you after the break. Right, welcome back. So, Phil Foden has left the England camp to fly home for the birth of his third child. So he should be back with the squad by Sunday when England are due to play their last 16 match. Congrats to him and his partner Rebecca. They have two children already, a boy called Ronnie and a daughter called True. So fair play to Phil Foden and his fully functioning testicles. Denmark finished above Slovenia in Group C by virtue of having a better disciplinary record. So both sides had the same number of points, the same number of goals scored, the same goal difference, and both sides picked up 6 yellow cards on the pitch. But Slovenian coach Novakovic Milivojevic, I think that's right, Novakovic Milivojevic, he was booked in the first game. And while UEFA don't count that, that ultimately is what the decision was made on, which is quite funny, to be completely honest. So Denmark are the group runners-up, and Slovenia will go through as the best third-place team. Positive news, Barnabas Varga, who obviously was knocked clean unconscious and suffered a fractured cheekbone and a couple of displaced fractures in his face after a collision with Angus Gunn, has been allowed home from hospital. So he will now take a few weeks of rest and then begin his recovery and hopefully get back on the pitch as soon as possible. Best of luck to him. West Ham have signed Wes Foderingham on a 2-year contract. And you know what? He's grand as a backup. All I'll say is go and look up League One Wes. Let's see if we Google. It should come up, League One Wes. Yeah. Go and look up League One Wes. There's a Cy Ferry interview about it. There's a couple of DeCanio videos about it. And also just look up Simon Ferry talking about Paolo DeCanio and Simon Ferry talking about Thomas Gravison. Just look those things up because they're tremendous fun. What have we got then? Just the gossip to finish us up today. Tottenham are interested in Crystal Palace's Eberechi Eze and could look to activate a release clause in his contract. Brighton are keen on Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. That's one that nearly happened, I think, in January. I would imagine what might happen here is that they sign Dewsbury-Hall and Pascal Gross leaves, and I think that's a win for Brighton. I like Pascal Gross, but he's now 33. I think it's time to move on. Dewsbury-Hall's a big upgrade in the centre of the park for you. Excuse me. Arsenal have inquired about signing Johan Bakayoko. Bayern Munich are interested in João Polini, but are well short of Fulham's 60 million valuation. Aston Villa are considering a move for Pedro Goncalves. I doubt it. Ipswich are in advanced talks to sign Ben Johnson, who apparently has turned down a new contract with West Ham and is set to move to the newly promoted team. Manchester United have held talks with Juventus about a move for Adrian Rabiot. Aston Villa and Brighton are interested in Norwegian side Sogndal's 18-year-old Ghanaian winger Edmund Bedu, who's meant to be talented. I haven't seen him. Erik ten Hag is set to sign a new contract. He will retain the title of manager, not that it makes any difference. Barcelona could be interested in signing Jadon Sancho. No, they're not. Marc Roca is in advanced talks with Real Betis over a permanent move from Leeds. Chelsea apparently have almost completed the signing of Mark Waite. West Ham are prepared to allow Danny Ings to leave this summer, and Southampton have already registered their interest. Tottenham have beaten a number of Premier League clubs to signing of Glentoran's 16-year-old striker George Feeney, who represented Northern Ireland and Wales at youth level. And this is just mental. Hull's 22-year-old English winger Jadon Philogene has been offered to Barcelona on a loan with an option to buy. I would like to offer myself to ESPN on loan with an option to buy. I think it's a good deal for everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow.
Sports Social Podcast Network.